Alright, good evening everybody. We're on to the 22nd episode of Cultist Simulator, playing as the Detective Legacy. I'm calling this the Librarian run, where we try to get one of every text in the game on basically... I kind of figure this doesn't require a huge, definition for the valid Librarian run or anything, but I'd sort of say, at the time I achieve an ending of the game, the run is complete if I have one of every text on the board. And I'm not going to get too strict with the idea that it needs to be both the translated and untranslated versions. I haven't thought that carefully in terms about it. It's entirely possible that this is not actually an achievable run, but that's kind of the plan of it. And we're playing again as Ivan Vucetich. So my faith in my approach has been shaken a little bit, but the way to push forward, or the way to clarify that, really will be to push forward. And so I'm figuring I need at least at most three more runs on the Forsaken Reach to figure out whether or not it'll accomplish the thing that I'm looking for. We do still have things that we can do in the meantime, and again, I'm not giving up if my Reach experiments haven't worked. It does mean that I'm going to try a different approach, though. And of course, we are starting to run out of occult scraps, so if it does turn out that this is this is just a very long way of accomplishing what I'm looking to do, it does mean that I need to be getting more Furtive Truths and Forgotten Chronicles. Although, again, it's always a good idea for me to fill out whatever expeditions I can get. I, for instance, thought I would be upgrading occult scraps into Furtive Truths at this point, which clearly I am not. So it's nice to get this. It's just nice to get this stuff out of the way at the start, so I can make some decisions in terms of where I'm going to put my effort. I don't want to give up on reading some text, because I know, sometimes people just like listening to the voice. It doesn't really matter what's being said. So in that case, sorry, I should have read the text. Spencer Hobson. Hobson has been a journalist, a private detective, and rather briefly a priest. Now he's an agent for the Suppression Bureau. Now Hobson's an interesting one. He is erratic. This hunter often fails to create evidence from notoriety. Conversely, they'll sometimes create evidence even when they can't find notoriety. So this is actually more dangerous to me than somebody who's meticulous. But we'll work with it. We also have Mystic. This hunter will usually survive attacks by creatures of the Mantis, even if those attacks would otherwise be unstoppable. So basically, we don't send Maids in the Mirror after him. Once again, we go to the Forsaken Reach. We'll start with a couple of Lantern followers, along with some money. Always happy to get the Forgotten Chronicles. Last night, I visited the Lodge of the Sage Knight. My hostess manifested as an elegant woman with fashionably short hair and dark glasses. No, she admits, I don't need them any more than I need eyes. Allow me my sentimentalities. But you've come here for knowledge, I expect. Here's a story I heard in my Kersham days. You're welcome to it, only remember me if you come to make the pilgrimage. Alright, the law does not touch this decaying fringe of the city. The mud here has claimed many lives, and there will no doubt be some wretched criminals or other layering in the warehouse. So we will add Sylvia. And there's the evidence. So we get a free turn, and I think we're just going to keep using the talk verb to grab notoriety until the all right, the Watchman will clear our sight so that we can almost certainly pass without error. I'm not going to add the Moth Follower quite yet, just because of the wounds. Actually, I guess Sylvia was the one with the wounds, so maybe we will add Yusabet. Clouds apart. Sorry. Okay, this is good. The white door opens. Last night, in the great pavilion above the grey sprawl of the Bounds, a woman who once called herself Teresa Gallagher sat on gilt-fringed cushions and offered me a horn cup of dream wine. The wine is imaginary, she explained, but the cup is not. To navigate the Mansus, one must understand the distinction. Perhaps one day you'll join me on the pilgrimage, or I'll join you. So here, let us share a secret. And her breath tickled my ear. So in this case, we are going to pull Leo out from the reputation job. We do want to make sure that this doesn't expire. So we talked about bringing Eau Claire and Violet up to 10, which we have. And I think it was going to be Eldridge, because in this case, basically for every principal, we have 10... We basically have 10 power of the aspect. And the exceptions to that are Grail, which we're never going to get until we either recruit Rhaenyra or otherwise bring in some kind of a Grail follower. Actually, yeah, I think we would need more than 2 if we brought in someone else. Edge as well. For some reason, I don't like. I quite like Edge as a principal, but for using it, I kind of feel like there are more clever ways around I don't know, there's just something about playing a cult game, and it's absolutely true that you have these stories, stories of secret societies and such, and someone's murdered because they know too much, or because they did something wrong, right? Murder does actually wind up being one of these things that happens quite a bit, and yet it does feel like kind of this is the thing that brings the investigators into the situation. Like, going in and just killing everything doesn't really seem to be the easiest way to deal with your problems. In some cases, drive them mad, or burgle their residence and get rid of the evidence or something. There seem to be some other options, and so I've moved away from the Edge solutions just because they don't always seem to be the ones that are consistent with what I would think would be, I don't know, I'll sound like some kind of management consultant, cult best practices. So yeah, this is one of the reasons I've been more resistant to bring up Victor and Eldridge. Not because I don't. Also, I don't remember. I guess we imprisoned Rose. Anyways, I feel like we were missing one of the cultists, but I do seem to recall we did imprison someone before Rhaenyra. So, but yeah. Anyways, with my cult, like, I wanted to try and make sure that any obstacle I had a pretty good chance of overcoming it, and this will be particularly true with the curses. And then the reason why I've held back on my knock followers is just once I'm able to turn them into keys, essentially any knock challenge is trivial. So it feels weird, but just because I haven't been able to rely on getting lore or something like that, the knock followers are some of the easiest ones. If the subtle fracture decays, for instance, I can still upgrade a knock follower off of that. So I've been a little bit more. I've been a little more reluctant to bring Neville and Enid. Well, Enid I can't bring up. Neville I've been more reluctant to bring up just because I know I have the option later. Safe across treacherous ground. We're mud spattered and thorn scratched, but we made it through. All right, investigations turned up no new leads. And here we go. So we're specifically avoiding the occult conversations because we want to use this for an upgrade, just in case that wasn't clear. I know I just talked about it, but I sometimes don't focus on every video I watch all the time. So, but yes, we've got Valsine, we've got Violet, we've bring in Eldridge. Eldridge has almost learned not to pick his teeth with his knife in conversation. He has not yet learned to leave his knife in his boot. My follower will kneel as a novice and rise as an initiate. I will administer the necessary oaths myself. Okay, so in this case, just adding money will help us out if we you know, if we run into trouble with the Watchers again. We're being investigated, so we don't know whether or not this will turn into evidence or not. In last night's dream, I was in the lodge of the Sage Knight behind the white door. It's difficult to remember exactly how I came there, and the mistress of this place, the woman with the dark glasses, was nodding as if I had asked her a difficult question. Of course I hadn't. I lost my speech when I passed the white door. How is it that I can speak, she said to me. I didn't come here through the white door. I'm not proud of what I did to come here, so let me tell you about something else. Okay. We'll leave that aside. Okay, that's actually one of the better ones to get picked up, because this is gone in a minute and a half. And again, if I have to destroy the evidence, we've got moth followers for that. Look closer. Closer still. Closer. Keep looking. Now close your eyes. Sorry, there was a closer I should have added in there. Considering the evidence, if a hunter has found notoriety, they will try to use it to create or upgrade evidence. If they're meticulous, they'll always succeed. If they're erratic, they're more likely to fail, but they can occasionally create evidence even without notoriety. I didn't even read the text for that, I apologize. To she who is flesh, I offer my wounds. To she who is stone, I offer this moment, where my old self divides from my new. To she who came from light, I offer my secrets. The door is opened. So I will confess, like, the fun thing about Cultist Simulator, in fact, playing more of Book of Hours, I'm back to taking notes while I play the game. I resisted for so long, but it has gotten to the point where I take notes. And I will confess, I do tend to be a little bit more mechanical in my note-taking. So there is something about sort of relationships between the different, there are new principles in Book of Hours, for instance. So there's like sky, or maybe I shouldn't call them principles, but there's new aspects to deal with. So there's sky, moon, scale, sky, moon, scale. There's one, rose is the one I wanted to say. There's others that, but it's, you know, I don't need to give a comprehensive list. So again, just trying to say, it's like, okay, so if I use this thing, this is what happens. If I use that thing, you know, this is the consequence, so on and so forth. The other set of notes that I would keep for Cultist Simulator, and it's been a while since I've done something like this, which is to work out all of the different relationships with the the different concepts in the game. So a good example here, so to she who is flesh, I offer my wounds. To she who is stone, I offer this moment, where my old self divides from my new. To she who came from light, I offer my secrets. The door is opened. Now, the thing is that, like, when you read a piece of text like this, there's a number of different ways that you can interpret it. So, you know, this could be to she who is flesh, to she who is stone, to she who came from light. This could be three different people, or this could all be in reference to one person, right? So, in fact, one thing you could do would be to just consider the hours in Cultist Simulator, and like ask, well, how many of them are she's? Like that on its own. Like, and actually, I guess it would be kind of interesting, because the more I think of it, like the twins. Or not the twin, the witch and the witch and sister, and the sister and witch. Yeah, I guess that would be. Jeez. But anyway, so if you assume that this is in reference to one person, so like my guess here would be what I want to try and get at. And I know for some people this isn't interesting, and for other people this is very interesting, but they know a lot about the game, and so anything I have to say maybe isn't as interesting. But I maybe think I could share a bit in terms of like where I would work. So like here's an example. I don't actually think this would be true, and I'll give an offer in terms of why. So it's like, okay, I've got knock, and it would seem to me, okay, so if we're invoking knock, one of the first people I think of is the Mother of Ants. This might also just be because I remember the image for the Mother of Ants very well from the early times of Cultist Simulator. So let's say if I say, okay, with certainty I know this is in reference to the Mother of Ants. Fair enough. So what does that tell me? Well, I suppose, is this a reference then that somehow, the Mother of Ants is, God from stone, God from light, God from flesh? Sorry, I can't remember the proper term that I'm trying to think of. Anyways, you get the idea. No, it is God from flesh. But yeah, but then the challenge would be, it's like, I think I've only ever heard of the Mother of Ants being one of the gods from flesh. So in this case here, right, I've talked about this before, right? You have your hypothesis, you find something to invalidate it, and so you sort of knock it down, and you try and figure out maybe what what the other one. There is, of course, like when we talk about stone, there are, there's special events in terms of there's the Colonel slew the 7 coiled, I think. So there could be a reference to stone there, but in any case, right? But then the alternative would be, it's like, okay, well, can I think of any gods? Can I think of any hours that have the aspect of knock that would fall under, stone, flesh, and light? And to be honest, I can't think of that. The best I could imagine would be, if this is in reference to 3 people, I'm like 99% sure that we've got the Mother of Ants would be the Mother of Ants would be the reference to flesh. To she who is flesh, I offer my wounds. And of course, the wounds I would suspect that's correct. To she who came from light, I offer my secrets. Now that to me would be the Menascate. Again, if you've got references to, to the light, to the sun, like, of course, like it would be like it was winter and we were talking to someone from light. Well, I would immediately assume the sun in rags, right? But I'm trying to think, who would the stone be? And I'm at a loss. And I'll be honest with you, it was mostly, I know some of this stuff because I was trying to work out, so like I really like lantern stuff, but like if I'm forced to move away from lantern, I will get back to the game after this, but when I'm forced to think about so like, it's fine, like, but I don't want to be a one-note person, right? I do find some other things interesting. Like, they're all different things that I find interesting, and I just relate to them in different ways. So, lantern, I definitely feel would be much more aligned with both my interests and probably a certain conception I have with myself. And then there's also just little things that I like, mercy saith the watchman, the watchman being unmerciful, like, ooh, this is a neat one, and, close association with the glory. Like, all of these things kind of appeal to me. And of course, it's associated with reason, and I'm probably not going to be able to claim that I've got a deep poetry, and I'm not McCabe. So I don't have poetry in me. So, this is all, I think, a pretty fair indicator of my interests. But, I also think there's a lot to like about Knock. Knock I actually find really interesting for a number of different reasons. And likewise, I do have a great respect for creativity. And it's not that I don't have any, it's not that I don't have any creative interests. It's just, I also sort of understand my limits along these sides. So Moth has an interest, although it's one that I can't always, I perhaps have my Mothy moments as opposed to it being something that I sort of consider core. Heart and Grail, I appreciate and understand. And again, like, none of these things are supposed to be sort of considered, like, it's sort of like, oh yeah, I'm a person, but like, I don't like my hands. Oh, let's get rid of those hands. I'd be a better person if I didn't have those hands. No, likewise with the principles, it's a combination of different things, and you'll maybe, probably align a little bit more with one or the other. So, if you do a lot of, I don't know, woodwork, if you're, good at fixing things, probably you'll associate more with your hands. If you, are very perceptive, well, you'll probably associate maybe more with your eyes or whatever. Again, but you don't, you still think of you as this unity and these combinations of different parts. Yeah, so with that in mind, right, I don't want to be one note. I don't want to be like Lantern is anything. Certainly all of the hours are not just dedicated to one principle. And so I'm sort of like, okay, well, if I start combining different things, like what is interesting to me? Where do I find some of the really, if I'm forced not to pick Lantern, what are the other things I'd be saying? I'd say probably Knock, Edge are probably two big ones. And then again, it's not to suggest a lack of interest in any of the others, but it's one of these ones where I'm like, these would probably be the Holy Trinity for me. And so it just so happens that when I start taking a look at some of the hours that I find most interesting, they do actually tend to line up a little bit with these. I've always tried to figure out how I feel about winter, because like some days I'm like, it's almost like me in the movie The Shining. Like sometimes I'm like, that is the best Kubrick movie. Like nothing else is even close. The Shining is obviously recognized as a good movie, but I don't think people understand how good. And then like other times I'll watch The Shining, I'm like, yeah, that's a good movie. I'm gonna watch Doctor Strangelove now, or I'm gonna watch Eyes Wide Shut. I'm kind of like that with winter. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, the sun and rags, and the winter and endings, and yeah, man, winter. Let's get more of that. And other times I'm like, yeah, it's winter. Let's go let the goth people enjoy that. But what I do tend to notice is that with when I do start sort of digging down and taking a look at some of the different the different hours that do seem to have more than one aspect. And again, this is my best understanding. And I like, there's now, I believe there is a wiki that's specifically dedicated to the Secret Histories setting, as opposed to Cultist Simulator itself. And I believe it is actually taking information from the multiple products to try and work out sort of the whole setting. And I've like, the thing is, I really do actually like trying to like work this all out for myself. So I need to kind of be careful. Like it's just the thing that like once I go to an authority and read it, like that's it, right? It's like looking for a guide to Cultist Simulator. You don't get to solve that mystery for yourself. And I do kind of like sitting down and working these different things out for myself where I can. Again, I don't have infinite amounts of time. But in any case, where I was going with this was like, the more I start thinking of the different, the different principles I find most interesting, I also tend to find that they are associated with hours that I find most interesting. So, the Door in the Eye, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, the Door of the Eye, Lantern, obviously, also known as the Watchman, the Mother of Ants, Knock, the Colonel is definitely Lantern and Edge. I feel like there may be another one, because if I remember the Lionsmith, I think there is Forge and Edge. But I seem to remember that there was another one associated with the Lionsmith, so it might be that there's also a third for the Colonel. Or I could be just making that up completely. The Menace Gate, again, I seem to recall Lantern and Knock for that. And again, that was my candidate for To She Who Came From Light. Actually, come to think of the Wolf Divided, I don't know if I like the Wolf Divided. I think that's an Edge Winter one. Then the other one, like, there's also a few interesting ones that I have, like, no idea about. And, like, a good example would be the Crown Growth. I have absolutely no idea if the Crown Growth is associated with any of the principles. But yeah, that's, you know, I guess that's another story for another time. But that's, in any case, like, so to bring it back to the topic of, like, you know, how do you make sense of the lore in the game? Like, for me, I've always just been able to say, it's like, you know, take a hook and, you know, sort of use that to take an idea and drag it as far as you can. So it's like, okay, so to she who is flesh I offer my wounds, to she who is stone I offer this moment, where my old self divides from my new. To she who came from light I offer my secrets, the door is opened. So in this case, I can say here, okay, so if it is referring to the same person, I would want to try and find something that is God from flesh, God from light, God from stone. And more importantly, it is referred to as she, and there are definitely he's, she's, and I'm fairly certain it's in the Cultist Simulator and the Sacred Histories. So with that in mind, that can also give you some hints in terms of where to look. So in this case here, I would say, all right, can I think of any, you know, combination, you know, flesh, light, stone? I should probably do that in a different order. Flesh, stone, light. And that's a tough one. I really couldn't tell you offhand. This is kind of where I'm like, okay, I couldn't, and I definitely couldn't associate it with one we would call. I definitely couldn't associate it with one we would call a she. So it's like, maybe at this point I'm stuck. So where else would we go? I'm like, okay, well, who would be the she from flesh? Well, elsewhere, and again, like, how would I know that the mother of ants is from flesh? Well, somewhere elsewhere, I'm like, you know, there was this indicator that it was, that it's a god from flesh. And again, I'm actually trying to remember how specifically where I got that from. And I don't think I can remember it, and I don't want to spend too much more time, because we haven't spent. This actually took a lot longer than I was expecting. But you're like, okay, well, let's, you know, sketch down, and, you know, maybe you'll take on your notepad and, you know, mother of ants ? And then you can put down your reasoning. And then again, I offer this moment where my old self divides from, to she who is stone, I offer this moment where my old self divides from my new. Well, you know, in this case here, you're like, we have gods from stone, so that may help you. I mean, again, if you have a list of gods from stone, so much the better. But another alternative would be, okay, well, what about this idea of division, right? Is there something that we would be able to follow with that? You know, so again, we look for a reference to she, we look for a reference to knock, we look to a reference to division, and then stone. And again, this would be the one this is how I would follow up with this. I'd maybe do that sort of on my own time. And then finally, to she who came from light. Again, in this case here, I'm just saying, knock, light, well, it's got to be the Meniscate. You know, it's the only one that I can really think of. But maybe I'm wrong, right? And in that case, you know, I would potentially go off on a wild goose chase. But, you know, this is to me kind of how, well, I find it an interesting way to engage with the lore, because it does wind up being a little bit of a search, and it does, you know, again, it's nice to just have like a little notebook. And I really have intended to do a video where I actually go and I do this sort of stuff with Cultist Simulator to try and build up this artifact. And I'm trying to think of the best way to go about it, to be honest. But in any case, like, because there's two ways of doing it. I can either do it with the files in the game, which is actually a little bit easier for me to do, or I can do it while playing. And you know, that can be interesting. Each of these can be interesting in its own way, but that'll be a discussion for another time because I know we're running out of time. So we are carrying on with the Watcher's Confusion. I will run this through. I know we're at the half-hour mark, but I'll at least run this through to the end because I do want to see where the I do want to see where the expedition winds up. Okay, favor from authority. Last night I dreamt of a blue silk pavilion overlooking the cloudy labyrinth of the Bounds. I listened to the mistress of this place speak of other visitors. The Suppression Bureau come here. Did you know that? I think they hope to recruit me as an ally, she snorts derisively, after what they try to do to Christopher. But their folly is your fortune. I'll tell you something that may help you if the Bureau ever troubles you. Alright, now I can approach the white door. Let's see how that's turned out. I'm certain that my adversary has lodged a copy of their notes elsewhere, with their solicitor, with their superior, or even with a contact in the press. This is troubling. I'm not quite going to follow up with that yet. This is just because, like, I don't want to say I've fully benched Porter, but there is a challenge here, right? Like, if Porter gets one more wound, he's done for. So, you know, we'll leave him for a case where I feel the chances are pretty good. So let's get Leo on the we'll get Leo on the charm. Oh, we don't even need to worry about that because it's 30 seconds, but that's fine because that'll go away and then we'll finish our expedition. So no harm, no foul. Okay, I can fast forward things a bit. My investigations turned up no new leads, much like the Forsaken Reach. A delayed delivery, a barred door, a cramped space, a hidden cargo. And we got sick again, so another good reason for us to charm the pants off of everyone. Okay, not my favorite. Do we have... Nope. We don't need to worry about that. Last night, in the billowing blue of the Lodge of the Sage Knight, I sat on velvet cushions and watched two dead contend with shining swords. They came with the place, said the woman who rules here now, the one who once called herself Gallagher. I was not the Sage Knight, if that's what you're wondering. He went higher in the Mansus long before I came here. My attention has drifted. The swords sparkle like falling water. The dead move like dancers. So light leaks through the cracks. My mind is brighter than it ever was. The higher I rise, the more I see. Earnest speech is affable conversation. There's no possible way. Oh, no, hang on. We should be able to get this. It actually says capital rewards draws 3. Okay. So, martensite paste and vital pigment. Ugh, I hate it when it's these two. Okay. You know what? Okay, so the next one we could wind up with 2 Refulgin, and then like a Byzantine Tank, Bitter Black Salts, or Elegabline Manacle. I think this is definitely going to be very stingy with what it gives. I also think the trick that I'm doing is not going to work. I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about putting an expedition out on the table like this, but I'm also... Oh no, this was a mistake. This definitely was a mistake. So I may try to occupy Rhaenyra. Well, no, I can't even occupy Rhaenyra. Yes, I can. Optimism is the spice which saves. Okay, so we're going to wait. I'm gonna go a little bit longer on the episode just so I can snap her up. Actually, this should be fine. Arrange a meeting on neutral ground. Are we enemies? Perhaps we don't have to be. Investigations turned up no new clues. Okay. Wrong one. So of course I'm going to have to employ reason to get past this now. I also should have been going for a walk. Okay, so I'm going to want to make sure that we'll have a chat about an occult scrap. It seems we do have something to discuss. Last night, in the great pavilion above the grey sprawl of the Bounds, a woman who once called herself Teresa Gallagher sat on gilt-fringed cushions and offered me a horn cup of dream wine. The wine is imaginary, she explained, but the cup is not. To navigate the Mansus, one must understand the distinction. Perhaps one day you'll join me on the pilgrimage, or I'll join you. So here, let us share a secret. And her breath tickled my ear. So, I'm gonna go through the white door just because it's 56 seconds before we get our vitality. I think that's not too much to ask. But I'm gonna leave it there. So, actually no, hang on. I want to put the reason into the scent of the pages. What hungers drive me? I cannot forget what I saw in the file on Ivan Vucetic. Resist. I am discipline. I am all discipline. I haven't lasted this long to give up so easily. This place merits closer investigation. So the worry here would have been that if Rhaenyra was looking for a location, she would have snapped that up right away. But here we will take Caro and Pope Clifton to go to the Forsaken Reach as usual. The law does not touch this decaying fringe of the city. The mud here has claimed many lives, and there will no doubt be some wretched criminals or other layering in the warehouse. Yes, and that sort of locks me up. So in 30 seconds, I'm going to want to use this subtle fracture to start moving people up. I think I said... Yeah, I mean, I guess I can move Saliba up. This is the point here where I'm trying... Well, I mean, actually, there is an argument for me moving Neville up on this. But again, the weird thing is that I actually am okay leaving Neville as he is, just because it's going to be the easiest one that I have to upgrade. So maybe we do work on Saliba, because it'd be nice to have some kind of a grail to throw at our problems. And then maybe we just go by utility. So, you know... move up Clovette because it's nice to have lots of heart people. I'm trying to work on my reputation. You know, move up Slee because we're using Lantern a whole lot. You know, then Laidlaw and Neville, and then we don't need to worry about moving people up until they become keys again. But we will deal with that in a future episode. So I am definitely starting to question this approach about the Forsaken Reach. However, I am still learning a little bit about how these decks work, so I will we'll figure that out together. And again, I still have plans for the run, even if it doesn't work out. So I'm not. It's not going to be a complete waste of time. Well, more than any other thing on YouTube isn't a complete waste of time. But that will all be resolved in future. So I think the next episode should be tomorrow, Thursday. We'll see you then. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.